this is Shelby with Charlotte's Personal Chef Service. I have been a personal chef for about 14 or 15 years, but I've been doing cooking classes for, I guess, about 30. So I thought I wanted to share a few things with you today. We don't seem to be cooking in normal times, and we're trying to adapt certain things to what's going on right now. So this morning I was rummaging through my pantry and the fridge, and I realized I had enough ingredients to make dinner, but you know what? I wasn't going to go to the store. In my normal life, I could go to the store every day. I truly am that little French girl at heart who loves to do marketing every day. But now we really don't want to overexpose ourselves, so I'm waiting till midweek, hopefully, to get back to the grocery store. So I went through my cabinets, and I found a couple of things that I thought maybe we could put together for a wonderful meal. Also, I had really, really good news this morning when my jeans fit. So I decided that maybe we can do some pasta, because I've been really watching myself, trying not to overload, because you're not expending it much calories, or at least I'm certainly not. So the first thing I want to show you is we're going to do a pesto. And of course, this is an Italian uncooked sauce, originates in Genoa. The old Italian grandmas would sit with the mortar and the pestle, and that's probably why it's called pesto. I'm sure there's a connection there. But nowadays, I'm going to use a food processor. And if you don't have a food processor, well, if you don't have a food processor, shame on you, because you should have a food processor. But I suppose you could use a blender. My blender is awful, so I don't recommend it, but I'm going to stick with my food processor. So I was able during the week, last week, to pick up some basil. Now, this basil's interesting because I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about it. These are the live plants. It says right on here, aquaponically grown. Really interesting, at least I think it's interesting. There's things that are hydroponic and there's aquaponic, and little difference. For instance, hydroponic is just things that are grown in water. They're usually grown without soil, just in water, like hydroponic cucumbers. I've been buying those for years. They're the ones that come already like shrink wrapped. They're skinnier than regular cucumbers. I really like them because they're smaller seeds and they're less bitter. Okay, that's hydroponic. The aquaponic's a little different. The aquaponic, spinach and even tomatoes, and of course the basil, as you see, it's got a thin root system. You can see that it's in a little bit of water. But these are really cool. They are grown vertically on poles, but the component here is there's like a symbiotic relationship with another species. In other words, fish. So what happens is the aquaponic farmer, I guess that's what they're called, has a huge aquarium. They usually use tilapia, but you can use catfish. You can even use fish like goldfish. Of course, we're not going to eat that. And what it is so okay, so you picture this huge tub with a lot of fish. And of course, we know what fish do. Well, we know two things fish do. We're only going to talk about one. Fish poop. So what happens is the ammonia in the poop turns into a nitrate. The plants love the nitrate. So the water goes up the roots of the basil. They take what they want. And then what comes out is actually like a purified water that circles back and goes right back into the fish tank. So it's very, very efficient. It can be done anywhere. In fact, I read there's 2 of them in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn. So it's an interesting concept. Say what you want about it, but that's how these are grown. I hope I haven't grossed you out thoroughly. We're going to take the leaves, put them in our food processor. These were rinsed very, very delicately. I don't have quite as much as I would have liked, but like I said, I wasn't going to make a separate trip. I'm going to save a couple of leaves for later on for a garnish for something else we're going to be doing. I get a little bit of stem in here, I'm okay. I don't want a lot of stem. Ideally, we would have a little bit more basil, but that's all right. We're gonna make do, because that's what these classes are about lately. They're about making do and not being a perfectionist over things, which I admit is hard for me when it comes to cooking, but that's what the world is giving us right now. Okay, so I've gotten most of the leaves off. In a perfect world, I would have maybe filled up my food processor to about 3/4 of the bowl. That's what I ideally would have liked, but that's okay. It's going to be just as delicious either way we do it. Then, you'll excuse me, we put this back. I'm going to do the remainder with some spinach leaves. Accessible, pretty easy to get. These, of course, have been an industrial wash. Fill up the rest of my food processor with my leaves. Then the rest of this, you don't even have to write down. This is so easy to remember because everything is in thirds. Just remember, everything's in thirds. You're going to put about 2/3 spinach, 1/3, let's flip that. 2/3 basil, 1/3 spinach. Then we're going to go on to our next things. This is a classic recipe. 1/3 cup measurer. Let's put in some Parmesan. This one happens to be the shredded. This isn't the brand I normally buy. I normally buy the Parmigiano Reggiano, but for some reason, this is what I happen to have today. A good 1/3 cup. Let's be a little generous on that. Next, we're going to do a 1/3 cup of pine nuts. I like the pine nuts. These are the Italian pine nuts. I like the ones that are either the Italian pine nuts or the ones that are domestically grown. I like those better than the Chinese pine nuts because sometimes the Chinese pine nuts can give you what's called pine mouth. It's a very bitter aftertaste. And we're going to do a 1/3 cup of our extra virgin olive oil. Push that around. So far, you don't even have to write it down. We just remember, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Let's put in some pepper. Good couple shakes. And some salt. And you will probably end up salting this again at the end to your taste. Does need a fair amount. And some garlic. And if you notice, I am using the jarred garlic. I fought this for years. I was the purist. I didn't want to use it until all of a sudden my hands started to hurt. And I realized I was almost developing a tendinitis from chopping garlic, that repetitive motion. So guess who now uses the jarred garlic? So I'm going to put in, I don't know, about a teaspoon. That is up to you, of course. Let's give it a twirl. I apologize, it's going to be a little noisy. I'm going to stop it so that I can get some of the leaves on top that have not blended to the bottom. And you're going to know this is done when it has a creamier texture and the color will actually change. It'll become a lighter green. Swirl it in. Now you say, Shelby, why are you making basil? Why don't you just buy it in the jar? Because, number one, this is fresh and earthy. Number two, I haven't found a jarred basil that I like. Most of them are just too oily for my tastes. Let's give it another minute. splash down one more time as it kind of popped up to the top. Can't control everything. Okay, yeah, it's looking nice. I'm going to give it one more swirl. Seems like it got an air pocket in there. There we go. One more swirl. And as you notice, I didn't even toast the pine nuts. Put them right in, right out of the package. Okay, that's doing it. Texture looks good. Let's take it out of the bowls so you can see it better. And then we're going to discuss what we do with it. First of all, let's do a little taste test. Good. Good, good, good. Don't even need to add anything. Be careful with your blade. Don't go sticking your hand in there. Stop at this point. You know I would scoop the rest of it out, and I'm going to get out every little bit that I can, but for right now we're going to leave it right here. So let's talk what we're going to do with this nice pesto now that we have it. A couple of things. First of all, this amount will work beautifully for a pound of pasta, specifically linguine. I love it on linguine. What I would do maybe is saute a little bit of chicken breast and add it, saute some shrimp, add it in with your linguine, the pesto sauce. Wonderful. Picky eaters tend to like this. You can substitute. If you don't want to use the pine nuts, use what other tree nut you like, of course, as long as there's no allergies. Walnuts, almonds, pecans, whatever suits your fancy. As far as your greens, you can substitute. I've made this with a little bit of arugula mixed in. That gives it a pungency. So play around with it. It really, you can't screw this one up. What I love is this on a flatbread. I love this on some good buffalo mozzarella and tomatoes instead of using the regular leaves for a caprese salad. And what I thought we would do now is I happen to have some meatballs in the freezer that I had made a while ago, and I've just got a simple marinara, and let's just put a nice dollop on that. That is delish. Put a little leaf on this, make it look pretty. That leaf might not even be so pretty. Serve it with some pasta, some rice. This is also delicious on potatoes. Oh, if you just saute some potatoes, put in a little bit of the pesto, it's fabulous. What's nice is it freezes. You can put it in a small Ziploc baggie, section it out if you wish, pop it in the freezer. One thing I do recommend, if you're going to put it, say, in a Tupperware container, just something simple, put a piece of either wax paper or plastic wrap on top, because you will see it will oxidize a little bit and the color will change. So that's what we have for our pesto. We have one more dish that we're going to make. And this dish, this one is just decadent. And that's just fine with me, because like I said, my jeans fit this morning, so I'm a happy girl. So let me just move the food processor over. And we're gonna go to our next dish, and that is just an old-fashioned Southern mac and cheese. This recipe actually has history. If y'all remember, 10 years ago, at least here in Baltimore, we had two back-to-back blizzards, 26 inches, both blizzards, back-to-back. There was little time to be able to get to the store in between the two blizzards. Well, here at our household, my daughter was a senior in high school, and it just so happened two of her friends got stuck here for the second time, and they happened to be vegetarians. Well, I had very little milk. I had no eggs. I was running out of produce. Couldn't get to the store. The roads were bad. So I decided I was going to concoct this mac and cheese. Well, I went into my pantry, and I don't know why I had it, but I had a Campbell's cheddar cheese soup. Now, I have to be honest, I don't do a whole lot of processed food, but I'm like everybody else. Every once in a while, you look for convenience. So I said, well, we're gonna do something with this cheddar cheese. So that was how Snowstorm mac and cheese started. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna start off with a half a box. You can double this, but this is 8 ounces of macaroni. I happen to have this in the pantry. My favorite, unfortunately, I didn't have, and that is, I like the cavatappi, which is the corkscrew, or the Celentani. That's also a corkscrew. I love that because the cheese just sort of swirls around the curls. Beggars can't be choosers. I had regular mac in the house, and that's what we're going to use. If you have to have your macaroni hold for a little while, as I did, put a little bit of oil on it. It'll help it from sticking together. Okay. Now, normally when you do this, I'm going to assume you're going to take this right out of your pot. So this macaroni is going to be nice and hot, which helps everything melt together. So we're going to add a little bit of butter. I've got about 4 tablespoons or so. And I'm going to chop it up in small pieces. It'll just melt in easier. Or at least it will, of course, when your pasta is nice and hot. I didn't think you all wanted to sit and watch me boil water. So I'm just chopping it up so it'll distribute easier. Give it a stir. Then I am going to add my secret ingredient, and you all can't laugh at me on this. So as I told you, I like a real southern mac and cheese, and it's usually done with a cheddar cheese sauce, and they put an egg in it. Well, I didn't have any eggs, so I started thinking, what can I do to give it that same consistency? And all of a sudden it occurred to me, mayonnaise is eggs and oil. That's what it is. So, I'm going to put in some mayonnaise. Now, wouldn't you know it, I'm out of my Hellmann's or my Duke's, but I do have some Japanese mayonnaise in the house. Crazy, but it tastes delicious. This is called Kewpie. It is the most decadently delicious mayonnaise. So we're going to put some of this in here. And don't be grossed out. Remember, mayonnaise is eggs and oil. Delish. We're going to put in a little bit of mustard. You don't want too much, but just enough. Oop, came right out. I would say that's about 1/4 teaspoon, maybe a smidge more. Let's give this a stir. Get it well incorporated. I'm going to add my cheddar cheese soup. And do me a favor, if you rinse your cans for recycling, be careful. I cut myself really bad on one of these one time. So I'm always a little cautious about rinsing things. Once again, let's give this a stir. Next we're going to add our cheese. And I'm using a sharp cheddar. I'm going to use half for the top, half for the inside. So I'm going to save some for the top. Now, because I'm a little low on cheese, I looked around. Once again, I scrounged what was in the fridge. And I found a nice piece of cheese that we had bought just to munch on with crackers. It is a Kerrygold Dubliner. I buy this at Trader Joe's. It is a delicious sharp cheese. It's fabulous. So I'm going to take a little bit of that. I have it. Might as well mix it in as well. I'm doing a Julia Childs and spilling everything. Let's mix this in. And by the way, I shredded that with using the top blade of my food processor. Not the bottom blade like I use for the pesto, but one of the top blades. The ones that sit in your cabinet and you hardly ever use. But I'll teach you how if you want. All right, so this looks like nice and thick, and now is when we're gonna add some milk. I'm using 2%, this is what I had in the house. Be careful when you do the milk. You don't want a sweet milk, and with everybody using alternative milk products these days, sometimes the flavor really can be off. I don't recommend using the lactate milk. It is a much sweeter tasting milk, and mac and cheese is not sweet. I'm not enamored with the soy milk in here either, but if you have to, you have to. I haven't tried the oat milk yet, so I can't tell you what that's going to be. You're going to add some milk. And how much is going to depend on how much cheese you put in. So I'm going to let you gauge this. You want it to be creamy looking. Not wet, but just creamy. And actually, this is looking pretty good. So let me show you what this raw mixture is going to look like. Nice and creamy. Maybe we'll do a drizzle more. But you don't want it too soupy. Yeah, now that's it. Now we got it. That is perfect. Gonna add some pepper. Because I like pepper in my mac and cheese. And as far as salt goes, you can add a little, but I would not go overboard. The cheese is salty, the mayonnaise has salt in it. You don't want it too salty. I don't like anything too salty. I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt. Like I said, we're not gonna overdo the salt with this. In fact, you might find you don't even want salt in it. Alrighty, let's get a dish. This is I did butter this. Took a little piece of butter and wax paper, just went all the way around it. And we're gonna pour it in. I'm not even sure how I gauge this bowl. Not sure if I used the right size or not. Not always so good at that. Yum. This is a set of dishes that I actually bought in Germany, and at the time it seemed like a great idea until my husband had to schlep them back, and they were just a wee bit heavy. Okay. I'm going to do a quick rinse, and I have to show you something important because this really is important to me. I want you to get a paper towel, wet it. Please go around the edge. Make a smooth edge. I just hate when I go to, say, a buffet or a potluck, I should say. People bring something, which is so nice. I mean, it's really nice they contributed. But it looks so unedible because they've got all those burnt edges. So you want to go ahead and wipe those edges. Plus, it makes your cleanup so much easier as well. All right. Let's just take the balance of the cheese. Now, I like a cheesy top. If you're a crumb top person, Go ahead, knock yourself out, chop a little bit of parsley, get some panko crumbs, put on a little bit of seasoning, some garlic, whatever. You could use crunched up cheese crackers. Do your thing. I'm a cheese girl, so I'm not gonna do it that way. Another couple things you could do, you wanna pretend that this is healthy. You could put in some steamed broccoli right in with it, or some cauliflower. Another thing I've done in the past that I had gotten the idea from an Amish cookbook years ago is before you put your tomatoes on, put some sliced before you put your cheese on rather, put on some sliced tomatoes. That's really good too. Okay, let's cheesy this one up. Yum. I'm such a pasta person. So let's go ahead and neaten her up just like we did before. We don't want burnt edges. This is gonna bake, I would say, I'd probably put it in a 375 oven for, check it in about half an hour. You want the top looking nice and brown and delicious. So I'm gonna move this one here, and I do have to show you what one is gonna look like. So I'm gonna grab a pot holder. I have one waiting in the oven. Let's see, oh, it's really gotten brown because I had the heat on. It's really gotten brown, this one. It really didn't start out this brown, but oh, I am just gonna love this because I love those like little crunchy edges on the mac and cheese. Yum. Let's put the next one in because my videographer and I, we're gonna be eating some mac and cheese. So that's it. That is what it's going to look like. Let's just dish some out. And the best part is the videographer is going to clean up for me. Oh, I love the sound of this. Look at the steam coming off of there. Look at that wonderful top. Oh, yum, some good eating tonight. You know what, guys? It's decadent, but sometimes, especially now, we gotta treat ourselves just a little bit. So that's it for tonight. We've got our pesto, we've got our mac and cheese, and next time, I think I'm gonna do 2 different fish dishes because of the last video, we had a lot of praise for that, and people really do want to learn more fish dishes. So tune in soon, and stay safe.